So we have something a little out of the box today on Rapzilla. We are going to be speaking of Luke Smallbone, who is one half of For King and Country. Why are we speaking to them? Well, they just dropped a single called Amen, the remix featuring the world famous Tony Williams, and it also features Lecrae. So we got a little bit of a CHH element in here. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about CHH and his thoughts on that as well. So please, without further ado, this is Luke Smallbone. Everyone that I've spoken to, they always comment and they say, you know, For King and Country has the best live performance I've ever seen. They're incredible live. It's crazy to watch. You have to talk about it. You have to ask them about it. And I'm like, I'm sure everyone asked you about this, but so I know COVID has changed things. You did the drive-ins, returning to normal performances. Do you think that's going to feel weird, like just kind of getting back out there and how much like an athlete does the crowd play in that momentum and getting that energy up on stage?
Yeah, well, look, it has obviously the pandemic has changed a lot of things. We did a performance that was recorded about a year and a half ago, just a few days ago, and it was kind of the culmination of our tour, Burn the Ships. A year and a half ago. It was in the fall, so it was the fall before kind of the shutdown.
Right, right.
And there was this clip that I was watching where we walked through the audience and we high five people, and literally I saw it and all I said was COVID, 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 COVID. As we're high fiving people, because that's what we're trained to think now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, look, I mean, it's a challenge for all of us to figure out what normal looks like
Mhm.
again, I think, and I think that everybody that's walked through pandemic, I mean, it's been a really sad thing for so many people. For some folks, it's been like a blessing. For other people, their
Right.
businesses, they've lost people that they loved. I mean, it's all over the map. But one thing that I do find interesting is that the entire world is the same thing at the same time, and that's not usually the way that events work. Usually,
Right.
it's like that state is going through this, or that country in Europe, or that over there. But this is something that we've all had to deal with, and I think that in that there's a spiritual side that there's an opportunity for people to kind of understand that there's a relatability that we have, even if we don't speak the same language, even if we're not from the same culture, that we've never really had, not certainly not in my lifetime anyway. And I think that there's always something that there's always something good that can come from it, intense situations. And even speaking from my life experience, some of the greatest suffering that has taken place in my life has led to some of the most beautiful elements of my life as well. So I'm really
Right.
hopeful for that. And obviously, I say all that very delicately, knowing that everybody is coming from different parts of the world, parts of and even just financially how they survive this thing or are working through this thing. It's a difficult thing.
Speaking about, COVID being all over the world, you guys have also toured all over the world. So,
Yeah.
have you been able to observe the differences in the way people worship around the world? Or are there a lot of similarities, or is there anything that's just like, wow, people, in
Yeah.
England do it this way, or, Russia, whatever?
Well, I say this with all due respect to Americans, but Americans are spoiled, man. So when it comes to live events, we have so many live events, right? And so people are used to, and there's a little bit of an element, I think, to some degree, kind of like sit back and impress me. I went to another show this past week, and they did this. Are you going to be able to top that? That type of element. And around the world, for one, I think that we do take our religious liberty here in the States a little bit for granted. So inside the church, I mean, this is just what we're used to. So when you go around the world, it means something more. I think a concert means something more, on other parts of the world, because for all the shows that I've done, I've probably done 1 or 2% of shows outside of America. And so that shows the amount, and I think it's probably similar for a lot of folks. You just don't get to go to places like, Singapore or the Philippines or anywhere in Europe. You just don't get to go there quite as much. And so when we're over there, there's just a different level of intensity, of appreciation. There's a different, if you follow Jesus in Europe, it means something to follow Jesus in Europe. Here in Nashville, where we're kind of from, I mean, everybody's kind of a Christian, particularly on Sundays. So it's a little bit different. So you get to see a different level of vibrancy, I think. And that's what I would say probably about outside of America, and maybe outside, I probably should say outside of the Western world.
Right.
is there's a vibrancy in other areas that in some cases, I'm not saying it's always this way, but if the general average, if you want to say it like that, there's a different level of the vibrancy of their worship, their
Sure.
appreciation in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and how is it when you guys get to perform in Australia? Is that like a big homecoming? Do they really show up for you guys?
Well, they did the last time we went. Yeah, it was pretty special. I mean, look, I often joked when we were going back there. What do they say, that a prophet is never welcomed in their hometown? I'm not saying that we're prophets, because we're not, but would we be welcomed back in our home country? I think that was kind of the question that we were asking ourselves, and thankfully it was kind of met with just this. I've lived in America most of my life. I was born in Australia. I was about 5 when we came over. So in some cases, people are like, man, you're not really Australian anymore. But they welcomed us like, we truly were. Obviously, I'm still an Australian citizen, and the blood that runs through my veins is still primarily from Australia. So it was really special to just go back and feel loved. I think that there was this sense of, you're one of us. They made a joke that your accent's not as quite as strong as it once was, but you're still one of us.
Yeah, it's funny. You go to Australia and they make fun of your Australian accent and they tell you you sound very American. And then over here in America,
Yeah,
everyone says, "Oh, what's
yeah,
what's up with you? You have
yeah,
this Australian accent. You
yeah.
can't you
That's
can't
true.
win, right?" Your big song now is Amen, the remix. You have Lecrae, you have world famous Tony Williams on it. Um, so I'm curious, Lecrae has been very outspoken about a lot of things and social issues. We cover it at Rapzilla all the time. He receives a lot of hate and a lot of flack for things he says that are really just human issues. So, did you guys
Yeah.
ever feel that doing a collab with him was risky for your fan base in a sense? And how has that reaction been with your fans?
Look, I think that we have this big issue. I think in our culture today, and that is, if you disagree on certain things, that you can't have conversation, or you couldn't appreciate another person's thought process. And
Mhm.
I think that's a little bit. I think it's a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, I've got my core beliefs. I've got my core thoughts. But I think it's very, very important. At the end of the day, I think it was the disciples who asked, or the Pharisees asked, well, all the commandments, what is the most important? And they said, to love God with all your heart and mind and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, I think Lecrae is an individual that is attempting to do that, right?
mhm,
And so
yeah,
he has my respect, because I do think he's trying to love God and love people. And so when it comes to getting into the minutia of some of these things, look, I hope for people that are watching this are having grace for the other people that they may not fully agree with, or they question,
right,
because I think that that's really it's very, very important to not just come across that I'm right and they're wrong, and in some cases we're arguing, or disagreeing over very, very small things. And so my hope is that they'll know we follow Jesus by the way that we love one another. And our hope is to do this. He has been nothing but kind to us. He's even the conversations I've had with him have been very spiritually minded. I think that he loves the Lord, and we have different ways. People have different ways of going about it. I mean, that's kind of what makes following Jesus exciting and
yeah,
interesting. Is you referenced it before. I mean, the way that they worship God in Kenya is very different than
oh
worshiping God
yeah,
here in Tennessee, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think in some cases the way that we are drawn to Jesus, in some cases, is through some of these conversations that certain people might find difficult to wrap their head around, or edgy, or this, that, and the other. And maybe it is that, but in some cases it's also drawing people to ask questions that draw them in to Jesus. And I think that that's a good thing.
this was a quote that I saw from your brother about the Amen remix, and I'll ask you about it. He
Yeah.
said that the new version of the song kind of launched the original version into a new stratosphere of meaning. So, what did the song previously mean as opposed to what it might mean now?
Well, songs. The trouble with, especially when you're doing, pop-ish music is you develop sounds and sounds change, and even in the nuances, that's one of the things that I think that we've learned the most about music over the last 5 to 10 years is it's in the nuances of music that change the meaning quite drastically. And so for Amen, the one that was on the album, that was out, it's been 3 something years now. Where when we're releasing a song to radio, we always want it to be cutting edge. We want it to be as fresh as possible. And so I think in when you're altering sounds and you're creating I'm using this word again, but vibrancy in a new way, it reveals, hopefully it brings the lyric to the forefront again, and so that song was about, I got baptized as an adult in my home church, and it was about just this moment of renewal that took place that really kind of took my breath away in the moment. I'm hoping it highlights that today, because I think with everything that we're going through that's happening in the world, we're in need of renewing. We're in need of new hope, and I hope that this new rendition of Amen does just that.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so you guys have collaborated with all of these amazing people: a country legend, Dolly Parton,
Yeah.
Lecrae, KB, Timbaland, Tori Kelly. So is there a genre of music that you guys have still yet to explore, or even an artist that you're like, they're definitely on my radar because I think we could do something that we've never been able to like touch before?
Well, I think that there's always kind of the one that most people would probably want to do a collaboration with in the U2 in the Bono type era.
Yeah,
Obviously he's an interesting man. Has had some interesting thoughts on faith in Jesus, and interesting thoughts as a whole. So I think it would be some of these people that we've done collaborations with is just interesting to just see their take on music, their take on creativity, and I think he would be one that I just would, whether or not the song even made it to something, just to have discussions on
yeah,
what does music mean to him, and how does he develop it, and how do you work out the creativity of what with the years and years. I mean, there's very few people that have been doing music at a successful clip for 4 decades or so, and he's one of those guys. So he would be an interesting one. But at the end of the day, a lot of times these things just kind of happen in organic ways.
right.
And if there's a collaboration that makes sense, that we'll do it. If it doesn't make sense, that's okay.
Okay. So I know I've read one of the inspirations for you and your brother is the Beatles. Well, I would imagine that's a lot of people. So right away, I think of the dual lead vocals and the writing of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, John Lennon. So for you two, who is John and who is Paul? Do you guys have this
uh,
this healthy competition to be like, all right, watch what I'm gonna write. All right, check this out, and then he comes back. Well, yeah, well, check this out.
well, I think Joel and I have learned more and more to the best of our ability to be, you know, uh, kind of one. I've often joked that Joel and I, neither of us talented enough to probably do this on our own. He may be, I don't know, but we make up one decent talent together, if that makes sense. The difference between Paul and John is they're both very, very gifted individuals. And look, I love melodies, I love beats, I love lyric concepts. I love all these things. And Joel has a little bit of a different spin. He likes to get into the nitty gritty of different things of that word here, or I like the broad concepts. And I like the way that songs make me feel, and their honesty and their truth. And so we're actually really nothing alike when it comes to writing songs. Obviously, when we're working together and we're
Yeah.
writing, I like my ideas to win. He likes his ideas to win. At the end of the day, that's just pride. But that's the way it is. We like those elements of things. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, we're if he's winning and doing well, then that's doing nothing but helping the process and hopefully better music. And I think that he would say the same. If Luke's winning, it's doing nothing but helping the process of making good music as well. So we try to be each other's cheerleader, for lack of a better term.
So then maybe you guys are just George and Ringo instead of
Maybe we
Paul and
are.
John.
We we
Because
may be.
you mess around with the drums too, and you got different things going on. You
That's
you
right.
got you split the time singing a lot more than Ringo had the shot to do. But of course, um, you know, everyone knows the Beatles as well for creating their solo projects and moving on to do other things. So what would a solo Luke Smallbone album look like, you think?
Oh man, I've not thought much about it. You know what? I don't know. At the end of the day, for the most part, what we do as for King and Country is probably what I would attempt to do myself. I don't necessarily separate them all that much. I mean, Joel and I try to create room for each other to be able to, for him to have some moments where
Yeah.
he can create fairly freely. And even tomorrow, he's going to go do one thing. I'm going to go write somewhere else, and try and create some space that way. But I don't differentiate them. I don't necessarily think that, well, what for King Country does and what Luke Smallbone would do are these totally different worlds. I think what you're seeing is probably what I would attempt to do, to be honest.
Yeah, just without your brother's input at the end of the day, basically.
Yeah, and how that shapes songs would be probably the interesting thing, because Joel's a finisher, I'm a starter. So a lot of these
Okay.
things, these comments, these concepts and things, I'm starting. He is as well, but I naturally like to create kind of from scratch. Joel doesn't like to create from scratch. He likes to change and manipulate the things that are kind of already existing versus what's not there, and that's probably the part that I enjoy a lot.
So you're writing the screenplay and then he's the director and kind of says, "Oh, maybe we should film it this way, do it this way."
And in some cases, that might not be a bad way of thinking of it. Yeah, good metaphor.
Yeah. So do you normally start writing a song on the guitar, the piano? Do you just think of a melody, or is it always something different?
It can be always something different. Probably just thinking of a melody, to be honest. Usually, melodies are things that start for me doing the mundane. So I could be mowing the lawn. I could be walking around the house while the kids are doing school. I come up with a lot of ideas in the shower. Believe it or not,
That's the
it
best
sounds
place.
nice. It
Mhm.
sounds nice in the shower. So and yeah, so it kind of does. It happens in all sorts of different ways. Then there's other times when I'm walking to a session and somebody will play just a couple chords, and I'll go, "Hey, this," yeah, you come up with a melody that way. So it really just depends. One of the things I've always found so interesting about music is you walk into these writing sessions with nothing, and then you come out with something, and there's kind of a miracle that takes place
Yeah.
in the creative space. In that, how does that make any sense? You play a couple of things together, and then all of a sudden something ignites, and that to me is the pleasure of what I get to do. Is I get to experience, and I get to be around a lot of other far more gifted and talented people than what I am, in creating something that hopefully will impact somebody's day and impact somebody's run. And look, the ultimate hope is to impact someone's eternal destination.
Right, right. And I'm glad you mentioned that, kind of like hearing the chord or just being around other people, because and through no fault of your own, because this happens to many people who front the band. It's like there's an actual band behind For King and Country as well. It's not just Luke and Joel. So how important is the band behind you guys in crafting and in shaping that sound that you guys are putting out?
Well, most of the guys that play with us, for the most part, are primarily just playing. We have a couple guys that work on the tracks as well, but
Mhm.
for the most part, it is Joel and I don't necessarily play things. I mess around with beats and different things, but
Yeah.
it's always the other guys that we're riding with who are crafting the sound. We do that all together.
Mhm.
As far as Joel and I, and maybe a producer, we don't usually. We did a little bit with the Christmas project, kind of get everybody in a room and we kind of play these things out, but a lot of those arrangements that we had for the Christmas project were kind of already established. And so getting everybody in one room made sense. A lot of times it's too many voices, it's too many opinions, actually. And so you actually kind of have to slow it down a little bit.
Mhm.
And, I don't like to work with too many more people than four in the room. And what I mean by that, between Joel, myself, and a writer and another writer, that's plenty of people, plenty of opinions, and you can do
Yeah.
most of everything that you need just with that kind of established group there.
Do you guys feel like over the years, their evolution of your sound was there a specific moment, a song, an album that really kind of turned the tide for you, sonically? Like, wow, we like really hit it here, and then from there we just kept going?
Well, I think that that first album that we made, at the end of the day, they always joke, you have 5 years to make your first project and 6 months to make your second.
Yeah, yeah,
The first project was kind of when you can do anything, so a little bit daunting. And that first project, we spent a lot of time making. And at the end of the day, we're learning how to write songs. You're learning how to be an
mhm,
artist. You're learning how to sing. You're learning how to do basically everything that you're doing that first time. The second album was when I think that things started to get a little bit more defined as to what we liked and what we didn't. And I think the sound for us has always been, how can we use incredibly modern sounds with then classic sounds, and you merge them together,
yeah,
put them in a blender, and see what you have. At some point, that's a little bit what you have with the King and Country, because even the fact that Joel and I harmonize as much as we do, I mean, that's something that's maybe considered more traditional.
yeah,
So, but
yeah,
you mess with modern sounds in harmonies and these other things. That's when you create something, hopefully, that's fresh, and that's kind of, I think it probably cemented itself a little bit more on that second project. This mix of modern and then classic. That's probably where it was really kind of like, here's where it happens.
yeah. Well, then again, that brings back that John and Paul comparison, right? What made them so special was those melodies and those harmonies that they sang together, sometimes in three parts. There's not a lot of, first of all, to have two like leads in a band is very rare unless they're doing
Yeah,
something completely different. But you guys are
yeah,
both like singing and singing well. It's like not like a punk rock band where like there's a guy
yeah,
yelling or there's someone
yeah,
rapping. It's
yeah,
like you both are
yeah.
singing really well, and that's very classic, like 60s, 70s.
Yeah, well, I think that was originally something that people didn't like about us. Is they were like, "Well, who's the
Really,
singer?"
right?
And it was like, "Well, we kind of both are." And so there were, yeah, we went and performed for all sorts of different record labels early on, and got told no a lot, like a lot of people. There's a lot of people's stories that are just like that, and yeah, I think that people didn't really know, where do you put this? And and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when you get fresh creativity, um, it's better if it's never been done.
Yeah,
If it's better if it's not, you don't fit into something, because there's enough leading headline acts out there that do a certain thing that sounds great. Like, well, why would you need another one of those? And I think that was always kind of our standpoint, and to a degree, even to this day, it's well, if somebody's already doing that and they're doing it well, let's not write that, or let's not put that lyric in there, or let's not have that melody, because, well, why would we copy what somebody else is doing? Because they're already doing it great.
yeah,
You're always trying to blaze your own trail to a degree, and that's what we hope to do that with Kink. It doesn't mean we're not influenced by
yeah,
other sounds or what other people are doing, but the hope is that it's not something, well, you just sound just like this. And obviously there's always going to be different flavors of different things that are taking place, but the hope is that it's unique in and of itself.
yeah, absolutely. And of course, since this is Rapzilla, I have to make it make sense while why I'm speaking to you for our audience. So, what are your thoughts on Christian hip hop? What do you know about it, and what do you think about this merging that's happening a lot of this worship contemporary sound with hip hop? You guys have done it. I think KB just did it. Was it with for Casting Crowns? He just dropped the song with them. So there's just this merging that's going on, and they're kind of meeting in the middle now.
Well, look, I think that one of the things that I think Christian hip hop has done so well is the problem with the pop structure, if you will, which is verse chorus, bridge
Right.
chorus,
Yeah. Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
doesn't really leave you a lot of room for a lot of lyrics. And in some cases, if you try to write too many lyrics, it's just too much and it's forgetful. There's something about the medium of rap that has a way of being very, very honest. And in some cases, if you're not being honest, you're just discarded. And in the hip hop and
Right.
rap genre as a whole, you're not actually serious, or consider you're not taken very seriously unless you are gutturally honest. I think that should be good. I think Christian hip hop does that incredibly well. And I think that the other thing is I think sometimes in CCM music we're a little bit careful to be as guttural as what Christian hip hop is. And I think that once again, I think it's very helpful to be transparent. I remember hearing Bono, speaking of Bono, earlier in the interview, years ago, was asked about Christian music or something, and he just said, "Yeah, I just can't understand why nobody's writing about their bad marriage. I can't understand why nobody's writing about their
Yeah,
struggle with their mother. I can't understand why somebody's not writing about their struggle with their father." And I thought that was a really good challenge in pop music as a whole, or rap as a whole in the mainstream world. They write about some uncomfortable things, and in some cases it's intentionally distorted, and I don't like that. But when it's truly guttural and truly real, I think we can learn something from that. And I think
yeah,
that's what Christian hip hop, they've learned a lot from that. They've learned that if you're going to say something, what it really means to love your enemy, they'll talk about their enemy, and they'll talk about it in great detail. I respect that, and I think that's super important. I think it's super helpful to the Christian arts.
yeah. It's very relatable. You can't. Life isn't always up or happy or whatever. You can dive into all these different topics, and I think music in general is kind of heading towards that. I don't want to say real, but towards that place now where people aren't as afraid to talk about these certain things. Um,
Absolutely.
so I have like two quick questions for you.
Yeah.
So I put on Twitter that I was interviewing you, and KJ52 said, "How
Yeah.
funny was it when KJ52 ate it, jumping off of the piano on stage doing a verse on Calling All the Messengers?" So do
Yeah.
you have
That's
a good
I do.
story about this?
I do. Well, we were down in Florida, and KJ's just been a friend. We've known KJ for a long time, and he's always been very kind to us. Very very humble man, which
Great
isn't
guy.
always
Yeah.
yeah, great guy. Isn't always the case in people in music. Yeah, but anyway, he came and did this version. We said, well, you can get up on this, this piano, and then you could jump off of it, and you could do kind of whatever you wanted, and so anyway, he gets up there and he biffs it, and I think it was at a fairly uncoordinated biff as well. I think it was one of those that, there's those moments where you do something and you're like, I look cool doing it. At least I don't think KJ, if I recall, looked very cool doing this. And so we obviously we had a pretty good laugh after that. And yeah, he's a good fella, a good man, and always have appreciated our times when we gotten to hang out a little bit.
Was he able to complete his verse? Did he seamlessly do it, or it was just like, "Let's try this again"?
You know what? I don't remember. I just remember after talking about his accident in a way that was like, "Yep, you didn't do that as slick as you could have," but it was a moment for us. So I look, we've all had those moments on
Yeah.
stage. I've done insane things on stage, and there's not a whole lot of way to recover pieces, but it was kind of fun to share that moment with KJ.
Yeah, having met KJ,
There we go.
you don't realize, like, how tall and, like, how big of a guy he is either. So, that must have been like a tree coming off of the piano. Um, so a rapper named Godframe, he wanted to know, what do you have a stylist, and what's the inspiration behind your image? And how do you guys deal with wearing those big, heavy coats, during the summer and outdoor gigs?
That's a good question, Mr. Godframe. It was actually funny. We were referencing music and what kind of cemented things stylistically. If you go look at Joel and I on our first project, there's not a lot of style, and the style was just kind of like what's cool at the moment. We then went and did a Christmas tour that first year, which we had no right in doing, but we did it anyway. And we decided, well, what if we were to dress a little bit more traditional? What if we were to dress a little bit more, Revolutionary War-ish, but Christmas? And so there's a little bit of, there was just something about that style. So anyway, when we did that, we were like, well, this is it. This is kind of the style that we'll carry on with. And that's what took place. Is from that moment on, we just had this idea of what would it look to be, you're hinting at history, but modern. and that's kind of always been the style. We don't have a stylist. Joel and I kind of, for better or worse, yay, nay, no, don't like that, yes. And, we work with just different people. Our wives usually kind of know what looks good on us and what doesn't. But that's always the idea. Is at the end of the day, it's just fun to, it's fun to make music and artistry fun. And another way that you can do that is in the style. Look at what I'm wearing today. I wear nothing like what I wear on stage in my everyday. But maybe there's an element of you put on the costume and you show up for work. Maybe there's an element of that. But that's kind of what we've done now for many years, and probably will continue to do so. I enjoy that.
Hey, so that's a compliment to you guys that he thought you guys actually had a stylist. So good job there.
Well, we always do work with stylists,
Right.
but we don't have one
Right. Right.
person that's
Right.
kind of always the same. Yeah,
Do,
yeah.
do you guys?
And then reference to the heat. It does get very hot. There is a banner. There's like this banner of "I can do this" in the summer when I wear the big jackets, and at the end of the day, I don't look cool without wearing a jacket because I'm quite, speaking of tall guys, I'm 6'4", so
Yeah.
a lanky guy with super long arms on stage doesn't look that cool. So usually part of the reason why I'm always wearing the something is because it just looks the most natural that way.
Yeah.
Me just in a t-shirt, sweating like a wild banshee on stage in the summer, it's not that cool. I think I would rather sweat a little bit more with the jacket on, and that'll work.
You guys ever then wish that you picked something else after that original time? Like, ah, maybe we should we
Maybe,
did
maybe I
old school
will.
t-shirts.
The amount of times that I've had, uh, slight almost heat exhaustion. It's happened many a times. The problem is then you have a headache for the next 6 hours before you kind of get to bed and sleep. But yeah, it happens. But it's part of it. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so my last thing to you, and then I'll let you go, is what's next for the band? What's in the immediate future? Please plug away anything you have going on. I know the world is kind of opening up again, so I'm sure you guys are going
Yeah.
to be hitting the road at some point. Let us know.
Yeah, well, yeah, the world kind of is going to open up a little bit. Obviously, it just depends if things stay, trending in the opening direction or not. But yeah, this summer, it looks as if we're going to be doing some work. We're in the studio right now. There should be new content coming, new songs this year. Whether or not it's a whole album or a bunch of new songs, we don't fully know yet. But then we're going to try and go tour in the fall, and we're going to do. We did a Christmas tour that was a drive-in last year, but one of the biggest things that we usually do is our Christmas tours, and we'll do a Christmas tour again this year, hopefully in a normal capacity. And yeah, we'll see how we go. One thing I've learned over the last year and a bit is nothing is normal anymore. You kind of got to learn to go with the flow, and so that's what we've kind of been practicing over the last little while, just learning to just kind of do our best and go along with it.
Yeah, define normal. What is it? I don't know.
Not now.
It's
We don't
whatever
know
it is.
now.
It's whatever it is from
Yeah,
day to day, right? Because things are
that's
always
right.
changing so much. Uh,
That's right.
all right, man. Well, that's it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for speaking with me. Getting some
No
silly
worries.
questions in there, some serious ones, but I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys are out touring the whole summer, not having heat exhaustion, and just making some great music.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time, and I'm sure we'll chat again sometime soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, man.